Common sense is getting thrown around a lot as it relates to the gambling policy. Why do we need to educate the players? It's commonsensical. Well, you know what? It really isn't commonsensical, because common sense, when you look at what's happening in the NFL right now, would suggest, hey, we should be allowed to gamble. The NFL is making millions off of gambling sponsorships. The owners have stake in the sports books. There are a bunch of mixed messages and hypocrisies that the NFL needs to cut through and make it clear to the players what they can and can't do. And the NFL is sensitive to the criticism that they've gotten about the education of players, or lack thereof, when it comes to gambling. How do we know that? Because they had a media conference call yesterday aimed at thumping their chest and letting the world know, here's everything we're doing when it comes to educating players. We've got it under control. Don't blame us, blame them. We're telling them everything they need to know. If they can't comply, it's not our fault, it's their fault. That's the message they're trying to send. And as further proof as to how sensitive they are about this, and look, I didn't write about this and I wasn't going to bore anyone with the details, but I assume anybody who's taken the time to listen to this probably would be interested in the details. They had this media conference call yesterday, and I keep seeing different reporters tweeting about it, writing about it. A pretty broad array of reporters were invited to participate in this conference call, and we weren't. The one outlet that has been banging the drum about how important it is to properly educate the players, about what the NFL is getting wrong when it comes to not just educating the players, but explaining to the public how it works. Remember, last week we pointed out that the head of PR, Jeff Miller, was on Good Morning Football on NFL Network and just glossed over the fact that there's two dramatically different sets of rules. For players, you can legally wager when not at work. For non-players, you can't bet on anything, anytime, any place, anyhow. And I'm starting to hear from people who are aware of folks who have been pushed out quietly from the NFL and from various teams for things that we would look at and say, you fired him for that? You fired him for being involved in a March Madness bracket for money? You fired him for being involved in this? So there's a lot there to properly understand. And there's a lot there that the NFL needs to do to inspire confidence in people who have a stake in this. See, this is why I give a crap about this. If there is a major controversy that truly undermines the best interest of the NFL, that hurts me because I cover the NFL. If there's something that happens that gets people to say, I'm done with the NFL, that kind of, and I'm being as candid and transparent as I can be. I want people to be interested in the NFL. I spend my life following, covering, writing about, talking about, analyzing, assessing the NFL. If all of a sudden people say, I'm done with the NFL, it's rigged, NFL rigged. We see that trend from time to time. Oh, the NFL, you can't trust the product. You can't trust it. It's all scripted. It's all rigged. It's all predetermined. There's corruption. We're trying to help them avoid getting into a spot where it is a major and massive cleanup on aisle 5 as they deal with the aftermath of the controversy. They deal with any efforts by legislators to create new rules, to create new agencies that would have regulations that would control the NFL and make it harder for them to do business, and also prosecutors out there, ambitious prosecutors who understand the bigger and bigger the shield gets, the greater it can help someone's career by taking the shield down, by exposing this underbelly of potential corruption and malfeasance and impropriety that I'm not sure they're as concerned about as they need to be. So they have this conference call yesterday, and they push out more talking points. And of course, the people who were invited, now for the most part, I haven't seen everything everyone's written. I haven't seen it all, but I've seen a lot of propaganda getting pushed. I think it's important, and it's our shared duty as people who cover the league and care about the league, to be willing to say, you know what? Maybe you could do this a little bit better. It still astounds me, for example, in the 6 rules that they communicate to the players, they never make it abundantly clear that if you are in a jurisdiction where gambling is not legal, never bet at all. They're so hung up on the don't bet at work. If you're in California, if you're in Florida, if you're in Texas, if you work there, if you live there, if you are there, and you're wagering on anything, you're breaking the law. And I don't know why they want to keep that that distinction under wraps, why they won't just come out and say it. I really do believe that they're so concerned about the obvious hypocrisies in this entire situation. Once they climbed in bed with the sports books, it makes it difficult, if not impossible, for them to have any true moral authority when trying to tell others what to do. I think that's the problem. And it speaks to the humanity of the individuals who are in these jobs. They recognize at some point it is a load of horse crap for them to take millions from the sports books and then say to everyone employed by the teams in the league, you can't do this. Do as we say, not as we're doing. You can't go out and spend your discretionary income on gambling, even though everyone else can in states where it's legal. You can't do it because we say so, but we're going to take all this money from the sports books at the same time. They recognize they're in a difficult spot here, and it makes it hard for them to properly lead the way they need to. And should it really surprise anyone, we've shared the quotes in the past from the commissioner back in 2009 when Delaware was trying to fight the federal law that prevented states other than Nevada from having legal sportsbook operations. The quotes from the commissioner were so clear and so strong that when that federal law was finally struck down in 2018, I thought he'd have to resign. There's no way you can reconcile it. It was Jay Monahan type about face that we saw a couple of weeks ago when the PGA Tour and Live Golf settled their differences, and all of a sudden Jay Monahan's all in with the Saudi investment in American golf. That's how bad it was. And that turmoil is still there, I think. They understand that they are in a difficult spot where they're profiting from gambling on one hand and they're trying to police their workforce on the other when it comes to using the very product from which they're so greatly profiting. The best example I could come up with was the other day when I talked about the Olive Garden. If the Olive Garden becomes a major sponsor for the NFL, if members of NFL ownership have massive stakes in the Olive Garden franchise, and you tell all the employees they can't eat there, it's going to be kind of hard to balance those two things. And that's where we are when it comes to gambling in the NFL. So bottom line, and I've registered my complaint with the NFL, and I've gotten an explanation as to why we weren't invited, but at least it confirms for me that we weren't invited. And I don't know whether they think that's going to make us less inclined to cover the story. I don't know what the end game is in keeping us out, other than they just didn't want any potentially pointed questions to be posed to someone who would have a difficult time providing an answer that properly tiptoes through this minefield of hypocrisy when it comes to how much money the NFL makes from gambling and how the NFL goes about telling people that it can't engage in the very thing that the NFL is making so much money from.
Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.